What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions podcast. He's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. We are back. The Lions are 12-1, and the Lions win again. And it doesn't matter where they're at. It doesn't matter how they are. It doesn't matter who's playing. It's not happenstance, man. This is happening, and this team is legit. Great win against the Packers. But Scott, my man, we'll get into it. Scott, my man, how are you?
I'm good. So you know what it feels like? How are you before I go off?
Look, we're geeked up to get into this. It's been a week since the game. Just haven't had a chance to connect. So we're recording this on Thursday before Thursday night football between the Rams and the 49ers. I'm good, though. I'm doing great.
Good.
Life is good. The holidays are here. We're good. And our football team's 12-1. So
that's what I wanted to talk about, because it's like there's this theory out there that if you slip into a black hole, there is an alternate reality or a different reality. And it feels to me like several years ago that happened. And everything we know about the Lions has been turned on its head. And like, I don't know. I mean, obviously I'm fooling around a little bit, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it feels like it's crazy.
it is.
It's crazy the fashion in which they won that game last week, and just everything that's happening there. Like, they got undrafted free agent dudes who rolled in there like Tuesday last week.
Yeah.
And those guys were balling. Tim freaking Patrick scored twice.
6 catches, 46 yards.
And we've been calling for that. Like, you know, so if you're listening, Ben Johnson, which I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
And, you know, you should be, because what else do you have to do? Just kidding. No, like, it's crazy to watch that team execute things. And we're going to talk about that fourth down play a little bit, because as we get into this, because the way they blocked that up was incredible. And just it's when they get into a pinch or a bind, it seems like they're most teams have like skill position dudes who, like, you know, if you think it's the thing about the Bengals, they're going to throw to Chase, or other teams it's skill position guys. But the Lions dude on offense is Penei Sewell. So when they get into a pickle or they get into situations where they really need yards, they seem to rely upon him, and his everything was on display on that fourth down play, and it's just incredible. And I love O-line play, so there's some of that there where I'm super biased. So I see some of those things, and it's like, he shouldn't be able to do 4 of the 5 things he did in that one play, but he did them all. He strung them all together, and it's just silly.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that a little bit later, but yeah, I mean, just what can you say? They're 12-1, and that was a huge game.
Yeah. I mean, and it was I label it as a gutsy performance. Because it's one of those where you mentioned the fourth downs, right? Like, they were 4 for 5 on fourth down. 2 of the fourth downs they scored touchdowns on.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the turning point of a football game. And that's what makes the Lions so much different from everybody else. Because when you look at other teams across the league, it's 4th and goal from their 2 or 3, you're kicking a field goal. You know, 4th and goal from the 4 or 1 or whatever, you're kicking a field goal. Not Dan Campbell, not this team. And I think the best part is it was pretty much revealed that it's not always Dan Campbell making that call. Jared Goff's going up to him. The players are going up to him and saying, let's effing go. Let's get this. And it's just, I have a saying, work is one, win is one. This team, they work as one and they freaking win as one. And that's why they've won 11 in a row. That's why they're 12-1. And
imagine the currency that buys him inside that locker room too.
Exactly. And speaking of locker rooms, I mean, that post-game speech from him, maybe the best speech he's ever had. I mean, just the skipper thing, the funny thing I've ever seen, but the greatest speech of, like, you know, we know who we are, and, you know, we live it, we breathe it, we are this. And, like, I mean, we all know that this city would run through a wall for the guy, but there's 53 dudes in that locker room, 60 dudes in that locker room, whatever the case may be, that are literally doing that for him, and it shows. And they are legitimately doing it play after play, game after game. And I will say, for me, and we can go into some of the offense and defense, but I will say, to me, this was a turning point game on the back half of the season, the last quarter of the season, because it just something feels different, and I don't know what it is. My gut is telling me something is officially. I mean, we know this team is different, but there's always I think for us fans, specifically for me, I can only speak for me. I feel like I've been kind of sitting here hesitating or kind of feeling I don't know, the injury might. We talked about it last week. The injuries might catch up with them, and they don't have an easy schedule. I mean, they've got the Niners, they've got the Vikings, they've got the Bears on the road. They've got the Bills here coming up, but just something feels different after this win against the Packers. And I just feel like there is the only team that can hold this team back is them. And they are unlimited to what they can truly do as a football team. And it's just great to see. And I think it really starts with the offense, because that offense, as I hinted at, 4 for 5 on fourth down, but their ability to run the football and the way that they get to the second and third level consistently with whether it be Penei Sewell, Graham Glasgow, Frank Ragnow, whoever, these guys get after it. And I got to give kudos to Dan Skipper, because I said it a few weeks ago when they played the Texans, Skipper's kind of costing them, this could get bad if he's out there, and he played phenomenal. He kept Rashawn Gary at bay. There were times in pass pro he looked tons of yeah. Lucas Van Ness, he kicked them out a bunch. So many clean pass reps by him, and just kudos to him for being able to get this opportunity to show, I could start in this league. In a pinch, I can start, and I can be more than just that backup guard or sixth offensive lineman. So I really love it. But looking at the defense, like you said, they've got guys pieced together on the street, and it's phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal. One question I have for you on just the defense of what direction this goes. I mean, I know we've got the Bills coming up and we'll talk about it, but were there any guys that they got off the street, whether it be Zeke Turner, Quan Alexander, Jamal Adams? Is there any guy that you're focusing in on as we move forward, where you're this guy could have a bigger role?
I don't know, because it was always, or at least it felt such a short-term thing that I didn't consider any of that stuff. I mean, maybe Adams, if you want to have him play a blitzing linebacker kind of a role. Everybody else, I think, is not going to have the opportunity to do that kind of stuff. But it's a good question. Again, it's tough to answer that question without really considering it, giving it some thought, because where are these guys? Where is Zeke Turner going to get his snaps at?
Right. Well, and it sounds like as we were looking at the injury report, Ben Nowosky was added to the injury report today as it's Thursday. He's got a concussion, probably won't be cleared and probably won't play. So Zeke Turner will probably get extended snaps again. And I'm glad you mentioned Jamal, because I thought Jamal, he pretty much played relatively early in the game, but he kept Jordan Love in the pocket at times when he was blitzing because of how quick and fast he was, and just he was getting blocked, but Jordan Love had to honor it. He had to honor that he was there because he knew he could chase him down. So I think that's a benefit, and it almost gives you a big nickel times 2 type of package almost. You know what I mean?
But you got to like it this week too, because Allen's going to want to run at times,
right?
And if you can track him down,
and I will say too, to just further it, Quan Alexander, he's got a spot. He's going to play if he's healthy. And I thought he was impressive. I really thought he was a guy that there were times he's a little bit out of position. He got caught in the wash, whatever. That's going to happen. But he made some really big tackles down in the box against one of the better running backs in the league. And if you're going to try to slow down James Cook, or you're going to need somebody to go sideline to sideline with Josh Allen, and it's not Jamal Adams, it could be Quan Alexander. So I'm really curious what that's going to look like. And I just brought it up, and I've thought about that question literally on the spot, because I was thinking about how the roster or the defense was put together, kind of just in the snap of a finger on a kind of a Sunday night, Monday morning type of deal. So
yeah, and it's gonna look totally different this week too, because you're gonna get Onzarike and Pascal and hopefully Reeder back.
yeah,
So it's gonna have a totally different look, which might be more impactful for a guy like Adams, right?
yeah, freeze him up.
It may. And if you get a little bit of pressure from him because he's got a little room to run, right?
Yeah.
Or Quan Alexander can run too. Like, that's good things. Those are good things. I thought Jack Campbell played really well. Again.
He's been huge. He's been huge for them. I mean,
yeah.
Just the whole situation, drafting him 18th, 19th overall, kind of what the expectations were. If you are sitting here saying he's not living up to the expectations, I think you're nuts. Like, I'm not saying you are, but if a fan is saying that, I think you're nuts. Like, all the injuries, he's the guy holding it down right now, and he's doing it
on the defense too.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, like he's got the whole thing.
Yeah.
So,
did you see that comment that was made about him from Aaron Glenn?
No.
I'll see if I can pull it up, but I got to find out who tweeted it out. But there was a comment made from Aaron Glenn, I think whether it was today or yesterday, and I think Will Birchfield from 97.1 tweeted this out. Aaron Glenn on Jack Campbell. He's a true Mike linebacker. For him to stand in front of a group of men, the way they respect him is unreal. You see it, and I'm sure the players talk about that too. He's a man's man, and it's just, he's done a great job. And also shout out to Dan Campbell for calling these guys Northern Savages. Like, what a badass name.
Yeah.
Like, they are buying in, man, and that's what I'm saying. Like, the culture is so different. They're buying in. On defense, and the same can be said about the offense, because I know we want to talk about that fourth down play and just the variations of how they can run the football, and their success off of play action is just, it's chef's kiss to the whole thing. I mean, it's what makes them so dynamic, because you truly never know, when are they going to run it, when are they going to pass it, because it's 3rd and 5 and they run the ball.
Yeah. I mean, both of the Tim Patrick touchdowns are like those kind of things where Green Bay may have been expecting run, not really sure.
Yeah.
Certainly the second one for sure, the one where he kind of came across the back of the end zone. But there's just so many ways that the Lions offense can go about beating a team. If you want to get physical and run real heavy looks, you can do that.
Yeah. You
can run some inside zone stuff if you want. They're athletic enough to run outside zone. I mean, they certainly can run that to Sewell's side of the field.
Mm-hmm.
But also the way that their tight ends and their receivers block too is really important.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, and I don't know how hard this is, because it's just silly to even compare it, but I know how hard it is to get things fitted up, even at the high school level, where you think if we block this right, we have advantages.
Right.
And then you get into a game and you block it right, you have no advantage, right? Or you get the exact look that you think you're going to get, and dude coming across the formation whiffs on a kick block kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, that stuff happens, but then you look at how they execute at times, and it's like, I don't know how many times they rep this particular play in practice. It's got to be a couple 100 million.
That's what it feels like.
It does. And there's not enough time to do any of that stuff. So it's just, they understand, every one of those guys understands their assignment, why they're being asked to do something. There's buy-in. You can see them execute things. If they weren't buying in, they wouldn't execute to that level. Right. Where they would not have great situational awareness to understand, all right, I gotta let this guy win a little bit up the field so I can kick him out a little easier, widen the hole.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's just giving a pro who's played multiple years in high school, multiple college years, and has played in the NFL too much credit to understand those things. But you know what I mean? Like, for them to make things look so smooth, and we're talking about 4 or 5 different blocks on that 4th down play.
Yeah.
Where, it's just, yeah, I loved it. It was great. But, we should probably talk about the fourth down, the going for it on fourth down. At some point in time, you and I are going to be talking because it will have burned them.
Right.
Went for it, and they may lose a game or whatever that they could have won. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I would urge people to just have a bigger picture perspective in mind, and that it's not always about going for it and getting it every single time. Yeah, you want to get it every single time, but the confidence that you're instilling within we mentioned it earlier, getting guys like Goff goes up to Campbell and is urging him to go for it. And Campbell takes his advice and they go for it and they get it. And if effectively that ends a game, it's kind of a big deal, that they're on the same, like Dan Campbell's not telling anybody he's better than the players and his decisions are his decisions.
Yeah.
And
he knows all.
Yeah. That's not what it feels like at all. We've had coaches in the past who have been like that.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a huge component of, how aggressive they are at times is telling those guys, hey, I believe in you. We can make this. And it's not, it's not just words. He totally does believe in them and they know it and they're balling, man. So it's,
And to further your point on the, just where the offense is and how, I don't want to say perfected they are because they're not perfect on every play. I mean, Goff will get sacked. He had the bad interception. Things happen. But just that variation and the variances to their offense, it's not like I think back, and I got asked this question, do you prefer, and on the Cover One podcast that I had done with Anthony Prohaska earlier this week, which you guys can check out over at cover1.com or cover1.net. But I was asked about Jared Goff or Matthew Stafford, and I immediately said Jared Goff, and a lot of my reasoning was because Goff has given me more as just a fan with playoff wins, so on and so forth. But one of the big things is I was like, when I watch Jared Goff play, I truly never know what I'm going to get on the field. Like, I know I'm going to get probably a pretty good performance, but like from a football perspective, I don't know if he's going to hand it off 50 times in the game or if he's going to throw it 50 times in a game. I truly never know.
Yeah.
And I'm so eager to find out. Where with Stafford, I can't even count how many times I saw in a third quarter getting the ball back, they would go out and 3 and out multiple times. And it was like all of the time because it was the same concepts over and over and over. And you look at this Lions game against the Packers as we kind of close this one out and move to the Bills. They hit on the crosser 2 or 3 times with JMO. They hit on a dagger concept, a beautiful dagger concept to Tim Patrick going into the fourth quarter or late in the third quarter, whatever it was. They obviously used Amon-Ra a bunch. They used Gibbs out of the backfield. We saw finally Gibbs and Montgomery on the field at the same time. And I don't think people are talking about this enough. They had 6 receivers or tight ends or running backs with 5 receptions or more. JMO, Laporta, Patrick, St. Brown, and both running backs with 5 catches or more. And Goff finished 32 of 41, 283, and 3 touchdowns. And they were still able to run it for over, 100 yards. And it's just like, they are so dynamic, so well versed in everything that they do. And it's such a fun offense to watch. And looking at that fourth down play, like the guts to call it and where you run it at and who you're running behind, as you mentioned, running behind Penei Sewell. And what I love most about it, as you were talking, I went back and watched it. They came out exactly, the last offensive play was exactly how they scored on the first offensive touchdown of the game. 13 personnel, offset eye, exactly the same way. They finished how they started, and it was awesome to see. And they motioned.
Did they block it up just a touch different?
They did. And they put Laporta in motion on that one rather than keeping them to the left side of the formation. So it wasn't all off balance, but they motioned them and that forced, guys to shift over. And either way, they were coming downhill to get that yard. And I think they ended up with 4 or 5 yards, but just amazing. And it's amazing. And all those dramatics leads me to kind of this question. I don't know if you have anything else to add to the Packers, but it leads me to, is this a top 5 game all time for the Lions? This game against the Packers. And I mean, I can't speak for every Lions fan out there that's been doing this for 50 years or 60 years or whatever, but through my 33 years, it for me was one of the top 5 greatest games. The Rams game was up there last year. Probably number 1 for me because of how it all went down and I was there with my kid. But this for me is a top 5 game of all time because of the dramatics, but the guts, the ability on the defense to make some big stops. Like, I think we forget that they were up 10 points at the half, 17-7. Like, they dominated.
Zeke Turner tackled Jordan Love in the open field with his with his left arm.
Yeah.
And I have no idea how he got him to the ground. But if he doesn't, they may not win that football game.
Mm-hmm.
It is just like, what's happening? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a really good question. Some of it has to be, you got to consider it because they're 12-1. It's obviously the most impactful game they've played to this point in the season.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's more important that they won last week than they win this week. This week coming up.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that I want them to, whatever, but they needed to win that game to kind of give themselves a little bit of room between themselves and Green Bay. Because Minnesota, the Lions they're not getting any help anywhere else.
They're not gaining ground anywhere.
Yeah. Like, watching Xavier Legette drop that touchdown pass was just like, and I love him, but like, got to have that one, right?
Right.
Regardless, for the situation that the Lions are currently in, chasing the 1 seed and fending off both Green Bay and Minnesota, how good the NFC North is. Yeah, huge game. I mean, I don't have a great memory for these things.
Yeah.
So, it's a top 5 game for me as far back as I can remember, which is about 7 to 10 minutes ago. Really, truly. No, it's it's as impactful a game as I can remember them playing in the regular season. I don't think it's, it doesn't meet with like the Tampa. That game, even from home, was just like, that's a whole different animal. Right. And when they play in the playoffs at home this year, the same thing will be going on. Right. But for a regular season game, for 2 teams that have aspirations to play deep into the postseason, yeah, I mean, it's a huge game. And Green Bay showed up; they played a really good game. Josh Jacobs, I think we expected him to have a good game.
Yeah,
we previewed it that way, that there was some fear that he would kind of chew up the Lions a little. He did not. He scored 3 times, but he didn't run it for a good average. It's not like he gashed him.
Yeah.
I don't know what magic glue the Lions have going on down there with that defense, but with as many dudes as they have on IR, no Reader, and McNeil going out early in that game which was just nuts.
Mm-hmm.
No Onzarike, no Pascal, all that stuff, and to still come away with that win the way they did, it's just crazy. It's awesome. Just incredible. That's how I'll wrap up that, Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And we would love to know what you guys think of this game. Obviously, I think we all agree it was a great game, but is it a top 5 game for you all time in your Lions lifetime or Lions fandom? And you can leave a comment below right here on YouTube or Spotify, Apple Podcast. And while you're there, go ahead and rate, review, and subscribe to the Detroit Lions podcast. Let's jump to the Bills. And looking at this game, you mentioned it. Probably the least important game left on the schedule because it's non-conference, it's non-division. They all matter, no doubt about it. But if you were to lose one here down the stretch, this is probably the one. Do they? We'll see. 4:25 kick Sunday afternoon at Ford Field. Lions enter this one as 2.5-point favorites, 53.5-point total. What should we expect in this game? Probably points.
Yeah. I would think. So the Rams put it on Buffalo pretty good last week. And part of that is because Stafford was just on a heater.
Yeah.
But Buffalo was able to answer a lot of that. Josh Allen was amazing last Sunday. He really was. He was awesome. So, he's so dangerous in a variety of ways, and they have enough weapons for him where, I wouldn't, I'm not terrified of like Amari Cooper or Dalton Kincaid but a guy like Khalil Shakir worries me. He does.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, like I could see him being, 8 catches for 60, 70 yards kind of thing, where it's just, he's going to move the chains for them. But it's Allen's ability to run is going to be potentially problematic. And that's, it's kind of like on one hand, I want to give them too much credit and say that the Lions are really going to have to score enough points to kind of stay in this game. But then it's like, I don't know that's how, like, script wise, how this one will play out that way.
Right.
Because I don't think the Bills are going to stop the Lions from doing whatever the Lions want to do, whether it's, the Lions are going to throw digs. They're going to throw to the middle of the field. My expectation is we may see a deep shot or two for JMO, because we have not seen those recently. They've been running more crossers for him, and he's playing really well. But I could see them taking a shot or two. But the big picture, I don't think the Bills are set up to defend Montgomery or Gibbs. And I could see Gibbs hitting a home run in this game. It's, a big long run,
like he did against the Chargers last year for 75 yards.
That was Montgomery, right?
You're right. Didn't you just say Montgomery? You said Gibbs. You said Gibbs.
Yeah, but Montgomery could do the same kind of stuff. So I don't think that they're going to get, like, Green Bay's defensive line is good. And those guys will find the ball and they will get to the ball. I'm not sure that the Bills are set up like that. So no, I think the Lions can do creative things running the ball. And if they just want to mash, if they just want to play that kind of game, just sort of run through a dude's face, they could do that.
Yeah.
And take the air out of the ball and reduce possessions and all those things, they can do that. And I suppose, if Buffalo comes out hot on offense, you could pivot to doing that if you're the Lions on offense and try to reduce, a possession each half for the Bills. And I think that's smart. But I don't know that the Bills are going to be able to stop the Lions' passing attack either. So I do think that there's going to be points in this game. It'll be an exciting, fun game to watch. It's always fun to watch, this version of Josh Allen play.
Yeah.
But, we'll see. The secondary's been playing really good. And, if you get Reader back and you get Onzarike, Pascal back, and you get a little bit of pass rush on Allen, then the problem becomes, how do you defend his feet? All that's problematic. But, big picture, I think the Lions offense can hang with Buffalo, and maybe more than hang with Buffalo. And that it makes me feel a little more comfortable than, as I've looked at this, because a few weeks out, I looked at this game almost like a loss. Yeah. I don't know if you were feeling that way too.
Oh, 100%, especially when the injuries started popping up and everything. It was like, man, this thing might spiral out of control here. I think we even talked about it maybe last week or the week before, like, how realistic are our chances to continue to win and be the number one seed?
Oh, I was 100% in my feels about the whole Buffalo loss last week when we were recording. In my brain, it had already happened.
Yeah.
But I have, maybe this is what you were talking about earlier. That just feels like there's a different vibe around things. Yeah. Because the momentum of that kind of a win, and you're at home, and it just is,
it's so different, man. And, to look at it like a little bit deeper, just from my perspective of like Amon-Ra St. Brown, for example, he hasn't scored in 2 or 3 straight weeks now, and he was on an absolute heater. He had scored 7 or 8 straight games, and he hasn't scored in a while. And I think this could be one of those types of performances where he has a big game, and he tends to have a big game every week with 5 and 75. He's like consistent across the board, but he's got a tough matchup with Christian Benford. And I just want to give kudos where it's at, because Benford has been a great find out of Villanova for Buffalo. His PFF grades coverage grade is 81.9, which is sixth best in the NFL. His overall grade is seventh best in the NFL at 80.5. He's allowed 25 catches, one pick. And I mention him because, they've got some injuries in Buffalo with their secondary. Hamlin is banged up. Taylor Rapp is banged up. So they're injured in their secondary. There's another guy as well that I'm drawing a blank on. And there's just going to be some things here with the Bills secondary where I wonder, do they struggle at all? Because I think the benefit to the Bills secondary is they're so versatile. As I mentioned about the Lions, offense, they can run just about anything. Well, the Bills run a variety of things on defense. They run cover 0. They don't run it that much, but they still have ran it. They run cover 1. They run cover 2. They run cover 3. They run quarters. They're one of the top teams running cover 6, which is like a split coverage between, cover 2 on one side of the field and quarters coverage on the other side of the field. So there's going to be, mixing and matching of variety things. But if there's anybody that's going to help expose it or open it up, I think it's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. But to that point, and to your point of being able to run the football, I might have said this before the show or on this show. I can't remember at this point as we're about 35 minutes in. Watching the Bills defense, and I watched some of it Tuesday night with my buddy Anthony Prohaska, the Bills defensive line gets absolutely gashed. They get tossed around, and it could be just Gibbs, Montgomery, Sprinkling, Patrick, Laporta, take a deep shot to JMO, and then the other consistent piece is St. Brown. And I think the Lions just have a little bit too much offensively, where if you can make the Bills one-dimensional, you take away the run game. And I know Allen's going to throw it around, and he's going to chuck it a mile. He's going to get his, but he is going to take some shots. He's going to get sacked. He's going to possibly throw a pick. He's done a great job protecting the football this year, but with the way Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch have been playing all season long, and Tieran Arnold constantly being in phase, if he's matched up against Amari Cooper, I don't think Amari Cooper is going to run by him. So as long as it's, timed press man and off man and those types of things, I think he might be okay. I'm just feeling really good about the matchup. I think points are going to certainly be scored. I don't know. Like you mentioned, it feels different. There's something different here going into this week, and maybe we're biting off a little bit more than we should be chewing here, but I just feel so good about it.
Maybe there's a gas leak for each of us in our basements or something,
I hope not.
That'd be terrible. It does, I do think that, sometimes in sports, there's a hangover that clouds a team, after a huge win. But the way the Lions did that last week, I'm not sure that this group of guys has that in them. Does that make sense? Like, it's tough to see that.
Yes.
Where, you fought you fought the way you fought, and you had so many guys missing, and then you get a bunch of those guys back, and it just makes everybody's job easier. And yeah, Josh Allen's this is going to be a tough out.
Oh yeah.
But, this is obviously the next game is always the biggest one kind of thing. But looking at the schedule the rest of the way, at Chicago is a challenge because it's at Chicago outside.
Yeah. And
Chicago presents unique challenges. But I don't think the 49ers game is as tough as it once looked like it would be. And I think you're okay. I think you feel pretty good against Minnesota at home. Yeah. Although they're rolling right now, but I still would feel pretty good about it, So yeah, the next one is this is a huge game. There's not a lot that you can say, with the exception of this, is that Arnold is going to be not on an island, but he's played a ton of man coverage snaps. I want to say
the most in the league, I think.
What's that?
I think the most in the league.
Yeah, I think I saw that too. I didn't want to overspeak, but I do think it is the most in the league, it's very impressive that a rookie is doing that for you.
Oh, yeah.
So then it's Carlton Davis has been really good. I'd say the last month he's been really good.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's why I mentioned Shakir earlier, because he's their slot receiver and he's going to draw Amick Robertson.
Yeah.
And I think there's an opportunity for them to have a bit of an advantage there. And then it's what can you do? And the Lions have been really good against the run. Can you put Josh Allen and those receivers in bad down and distance and force them to convert longer third downs? And if you can do that repeatedly, you put yourself in a nice position. You don't want it to be 3rd and 2 or 3 because, Allen's going to go to his primary read, doesn't like it, and he's just going to go get a first down. And you're not going to stop it, right? So, but I do have good vibes about it. I feel good about it.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of a recognition of this, is that even a week ago, this game scared me, which is ridiculous because I'm not playing in it, but just as a person looking at this thing, it worried me, and I don't feel like that today. Like, I think the Lions are up for this, and every week they do stuff like they did last week. It just makes you, for me, it does 2 things. It makes me appreciate how much it means to everybody. This is super sentimental sounding, and I don't mean it to sound that way, but it is. Like, right. Dude, my dad is 78 years old. My dad comes over every Sunday to watch the Lions play. He didn't come over last Thursday because it's a late game, but you know what I'm saying? So, but it's become a thing for our family.
Yeah.
And he wants to spend time watching the game with my kids, with my boys, and my wife and I. And it's just like, it's meaningful, and then to see how well they're playing and have like people that, around the country talking about like, man, your Lions are so much fun to watch. And it's like, yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They're different, so. So to me, it's like there's so much of that around this that this is going to be your kind of like your prime time before a Sunday night football game. Huge matchup, and I think they're up for it. And it's not going to surprise me if they play well. And I'm not saying win convincingly, but win. It's not going to. That wouldn't surprise me.
No, I hear you. I think it's one of those things. Same thing with my dad. I mean, I don't watch the games with them, but we text through the entire game, and then we'll call each other after, and we talk every single day on the phone, and almost the only thing we talk about is the Lions, and it's awesome. And it's one of those, I mean, like my dad texted me after that game and was like, "I love you, son." I'm like, what the hell is going on around here? Like, I don't know the last time he told me that. Maybe when I was a baby, you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, there's something special about what's happening, and it's not necessarily around them winning games and losing games. It's the way they're going about things and how significantly changed the culture is around this team, and how we can just marvel at it. It's just incredible what this group of guys are doing. Not what this group of people are doing. Let's put it that way.
Right. No, I completely agree. It's going to be a great matchup. It's going to be, it's going to be a physical game. And that's one other thing I wanted to add. The Lions defense, regardless of who is on that field, they are physical. They hit effing hard.
Yeah,
they hit hard, man. So this is gonna be a tough one. I think Sean McDermott's a great coach. I think he's got a great coaching staff there. We know the Bills going to show up ready, and it's just going to be a great matchup.
Slugfest.
Yeah, and it's like the appetizer to prime time, like you mentioned, and I can't wait. I cannot wait to watch it, see how it unfolds.
It comes at a good time too, because they need to know what playing a team like Buffalo feels like. You know what I mean? Like it's good for them to get punched in the mouth. It really is, because we know they're going to respond.
Right.
And what's the response going to be? And they, they need to prove it to themselves that they're going to respond. They've done it repeatedly over and over. They did it against Green Bay on 4th down, but this is going to be a slugfest. It's really important that it comes at this point in the schedule, because then it's, you're at Chicago, you're at San Francisco, then you're home against Minnesota, and the Chicago one worries me a little bit because of weather. But the San Francisco game is like, at this point, they've lost so many people. This one feels like something that you could see in the future, in a couple months.
Well, hope so.
Yeah,
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
Every radio spot I do, they ask me what it's like to be a Lions fan, and it must feel good to have these wins piling up and to go through so much losing and all of these things. And we are the feel-good story around sports, and it's awesome.
That'll be very short term. So yes, there's some capital we've accumulated to this point, but people are going to grow very weary of the Lions
and annoyed
and bitter very quickly.
Yes.
And okay,
right. Well,
we're going to enjoy it. Whatever.
Exactly. Hate us all you want. Does not matter. Our team is going to come ready to play every week. So fingers crossed they do the same this week against the Bills. I think they will. Going to be a great game. Going to be a great matchup. I don't know if you got anything else to add. I do not.
Well, I've talked enough. Nobody wants to hear me talk anymore. We're good.
Yeah, we are good. As we mentioned, we want to know, was the Packers game against the Lions a top 5 game for you all time? Let us know in the comments what you think as well about the Lions and Bills matchup. As I said previously, you can rate, review, and subscribe to Detroit Lions Podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your favorite shows. And of course, last but not least, you can follow us on Twitter or X at Russ NFL Draft and at Bischoff_Scott. He's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. We'll be back next week for another episode of Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions Podcast.